If you'd like, welcome. If you'd like, we're going to bring around a microphone. If you want to briefly introduce yourself, Michael's going to bring it so that those on YouTube Live can hear, and you are under no obligation to say anything if you don't want to, but we'd love to hear from you.
You'll be hearing a lot more from me, but I am Laurie Valentine with Community Foundation Tampa Bay.
Hello again, I'm David Gelman. I've been coming here since roughly July when I moved here, and it's the most crowded I've seen it. It's very nice.
Hi, I'm Becky Hunter. I'm here with my mom, Nancy Hunter. I'm visiting from out of town, and I'm glad to be here.
Hi, Reshma Naik and Devin Brown, visiting from DC, where I go to All Souls UU there.
All right, thank you all for sharing, and thank you all for silencing your cell phones. So each person's presence here is a gift. Please take a couple minutes to greet your neighbor and let them know that you're glad to see them and glad that they're safe. Remember to get consent before hugging or shaking hands. Hello, everybody. Can we come back?
It's going to be a 3-chime warning.
Here's your 10-second warning before I start talking again. You know what? Let me do this. Now, will you please rise as you are willing and able for our first hymn, Bright Morning Stars, which is number 357 in our gray hymnal.
Bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars stars are rising, days are breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Days are breaking in my soul. They are sowing seeds of gladness. They are sowing seeds of gladness. They are sowing seeds of gladness. Days are breaking in my soul. And there's more. Notice there are 2 more verses down at the bottom. Good luck with the rhythms. Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? Days are breaking in my soul. They are in the fields are plowing. They are in the fields are plowing. They are in the fields are plowing. Days are breaking in my soul.
Please remain standing for our chalice lighting.
The flaming chalice is a reminder that we choose to focus here together for this time today, and that we believe such a time is sacred. When Todd lights our chalice, I invite you to say the covenant out loud. The words can be found within your programs and online. Feel free to follow along with the 2 hand movements. Hand to heart, then reaching out like you're serving. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Please be seated. We don't have a Time for All Ages story today, but as a reminder, next week, Janae and Morgan are hosting our All Ages Halloween service, so remember your costumes. For today, let's sing our children and youth to their classes.
It looks like many of them already went, but we'll go ahead anyways. Go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
We come now to the time in our worship service for joys, sorrows, and concerns. Those of you on YouTube Live are not in this room, but your connection is still felt. Please type your joys and sorrows into the text chat. If you have a joy, sorrow, or concern to submit during the week, please write to Reverend Ben at minister@uustpete.org.
Right now, Rebecca Wilson will place a stone in the water for each one that was submitted this week. If you have additional cards that you filled out to bring up, please do so at this time, or ask a neighbor to bring yours up for you. So first, we have a joy from Sabine. You use helping people is grateful beyond words to Rob, Joe, and Ben for disassembling and reassembling the canopies for our Friday sunset suppers for both Helene and Milton. And we are so grateful to the board for approving our partnership with Metropolitan Ministries, which began providing hot food just when we were down volunteers and supplies. Thank you so much, volunteers and community, for maintaining our record of serving every Friday of the year for the past 15 plus years.
I have a stone of concern from David Gelman, who's dealing with a lot of anxiety.
I have a stone of joy from the Showalters for Gordia's trip around the sun. Happy birthday.
And I have two stones from Karen and Dave Cole, one of joy. Our daughter Stephanie completed her first marathon last Sunday in Chicago. And our dear and longtime friend, Rich Rosenberg, who passed away on October 10th. He was a wise, witty, and very caring person.
I have a stone of joy from Christine Barker and the racial justice team. For the wonderful racial justice events in the coming week, on Wednesday, we have the Racial Justice Book Club, and next Sunday after church, we will be learning about the Black experience of Unitarian Universalism. We were always here. For more information, we will be available after church.
Kirby. Come on, hustle. A stone of joy from Gordia. Food Not Bombs has had incredible support in recent weeks in the face of hurricane damage. And we will place the final stone for those joys and concerns that remain in our hearts, perhaps too tender to be spoken out loud. Thanks, Rebecca. Now, I invite you to read our responsive reading as found in your order of service. May our hearts not become calloused by the never-ending incidences of oppression and hatred that so many face each day. Rather, may we keep our hearts open to the positive efforts of so many people causing good trouble in the world.
May we have the strength to demand and gain the right for all people to have a safe place to sleep, health care to keep them strong, and the knowledge that their lives matter.
The struggle is taking longer than it should, but we will get there if we continue to strive for basic human rights.
May all of us find a comforting and compassionate presence in the warmth of fellowship and community. The mystery is that we are all connected even when we feel apart. Let us rejoice in our beloved community that makes of the many one. So may it be. Let's take a moment of silence together.
justice, roots hold me close, wings set me free, Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Sandra Moss for today's reflection.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandra Moss, and I moved to Florida about 6 months ago from Mississippi, and I am a member here. And I'm very honored to be speaking to you today about being Indigenous in this country. I am Native American, and more specifically, my bloodline is of the Sioux tribe from the Dakotas, also known as Lakota. As an adult, I learned that I am a 7th generation direct descendant from Sitting Bull. My father was 3/4 Sioux, 1/4 French, and my mother was reportedly of Chippewa descent. I haven't done the math, but I am clearly Native American. I was born in California in 1961, and this was during a time when being a person of color was problematic, and people often tried to pass as white. My mother even went so far as to put down unknown in place of my father's name on the birth certificate and put her race as white as well. It's surprising it wasn't questioned, given her appearance as clearly Native. As a child in the school system in California, I endured a lot of discrimination and prejudice due to the color of my skin. I was called the N-word, as well as every racial slur for other races such as Hispanic and Native American. My mother was not married to my father, and I never met him. She married a white man when I was a year old, and he made it clear that I was different from my siblings and called me an Indian and said my siblings were white. It was very clear to me growing up that my being Native American was something to be ashamed of and hidden if at all possible. When I met my husband, he was from Mississippi, and he had a very different view of Native Americans. He just passed, so I'm a little emotional. But he saw me as an Indian princess. When we had our daughter, I realized I didn't want to pass on the shame that I had felt regarding my heritage. And so I had to learn about it as I had grown up separate from my tribe and from my history. I started reading and then reaching out to Native groups. When I attended the University of Mississippi, they had flags for many Native American tribes on display in the Student Union. And while I was the only student of Sioux heritage, they flew a flag for my tribe as well. My mother withheld my father's name from me until she learned of his passing, and then revealed it to me when I was a senior in high school. When I applied to college, there were scholarships available for Native Americans, but my birth certificate did not reflect my correct ethnicity, so I was unable to apply for these. I talked to my mother to try to correct this and explained I could get my college education paid for, and she replied, well, you didn't do anything to earn that money, so you don't deserve it. And she refused to help in any way. So it's kind of odd. While I was in California, I experienced discrimination and prejudice in school and also in the workplace, starting with my first job at 13 years old at a drive-in restaurant. However, when I moved to Mississippi, oddly enough, the discrimination and prejudice due to my ethnicity ceased. I moved to a rural area, and there were no Native Americans there at that time, and there were basically only two races, Caucasian and African American. The whites treated me well because I was not black. The African Americans treated me well because I was not white. So I rode that fence very well for the 40 years that I lived in Mississippi and thought it was strange that I experienced more prejudice in the liberal state of California and not in the conservative state of Mississippi. With the birth of my daughter and my wanting to not have her experience the shame I had felt, I decided it was time to search for my father's family. I was able to connect with an aunt who was living in Minnesota, and I visited her. I discovered she was a very traditional Native, and was advised by my native friends to bring tobacco when meeting her. And I brought her a pack of Marlboros. It felt strange, but apparently that was the correct thing to do. It also happened to be my brand. But I spent a day with her, and we made homemade vegetable soup together, and she talked to me at length about my father, grandmother, and siblings that I had no previous knowledge of. While speaking to me, I noticed she never looked me in the eye, and her husband averted his gaze as well. My native friends explained to me that we listen with our ears, not our eyes, and it was considered disrespectful to look someone in the eye. While on this trip, I was also invited to a powwow. At this powwow, I was presented with a handmade shawl and given an honor dance to be welcomed back into the tribe. They saw me as someone who had been taken from the tribe, since my mother moved to California and I had no contact with the tribe at all. I was in awe of the beauty of the dancers in the regalia. I had grown up hearing that I was ugly because of my heritage and that my father had been ugly as well. When I met my aunt, she showed me pictures of my father, and I found he was actually a very handsome man. And at the powwow, I saw how beautiful all the native people were. The men were all beardless with smooth brown skin and sleek black hair. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged. The women looked like me. Black or dark brown straight hair that was beautiful, and I had always been forced to attempt to curl my hair since 3rd grade, and my hair was not cooperative. So I had grown up with a white standard of beauty, and at the powwow I discovered a whole different standard that I was a part of. I felt an acceptance of myself that I had never experienced before. Also during that trip, I experienced my first sweat lodge. The sweat lodge was led by an Ojibwe man who spoke in his native tongue during the ceremony. The sweat had 4 doors, meaning the participants entered and exited the lodge 4 times, each time with a different meaning and intention for the sweat. It was completely dark inside, and the stones that had been in the fire were put in a pit in the middle of the lodge, and the leader would ladle water onto the stones periodically. It was during the sweat that I experienced a couple of kind of supernatural events. The first was when the leader prayed during the first door and stated that nothing unholy, evil, or menacing could stay in the lodge. At that point, I felt something come up through my chest and out my throat, and I saw it fly out the entrance to the lodge. Instinctively, I knew this was the spirit of my mother. In between the doors, I told the leader what I had experienced, and he stated that he also saw it and confirmed that it was the evil part of my mother's spirit that had been inside of me. At the conclusion of the sweat, I went to the house by myself, and when I closed the door, I could hear native drums in the distance and native singing. On one level, I knew there were no drums or singing occurring at that time, but on a spiritual level, I knew I was hearing it, and it brought me comfort and contentment. At the second sweat lodge I attended, I brought my 10-year-old daughter, Katie, with me. We spent the day building the lodge and the altar, and at the altar we put the rocks into the fire to heat them and offered tobacco as well. At the altar, before we entered the lodge, I spoke to some of the women about my daughter's problem with chronic migraine headaches. The women asked if we would be willing to engage in a healing ritual, and of course we agreed to it. She explained that women are natural healers in our society. So the women and I held hands and encircled my daughter as we walked in one direction, with one of the women chanting and praying and the rest of us following her lead. At times we would stop and walk in the other direction with more prayers and chanting. At one point I looked at my daughter and I saw her levitate about 6 to 8 inches off the ground, and no one was touching her. My daughter is now 38 years old and has never had another migraine headache. So my daughter and I participated in that sweat lodge together, and we sat next to each other each time we entered the lodge. At one point, I turned to face her, and I could see a window of light streaming in where I knew she was sitting. I spoke to the leader of the sweat in between doors about what I had seen, and he interpreted it as the light my daughter was in my life, and that I was able to see it. It's important to note that it's very important that a sweat lodge be led by an Indigenous person, familiar with the rituals and the meaning of the ceremony. There were some non-Native people who joined in the sweat lodge I attended, but they were not in leadership positions. They were simply participants. I know it can seem really cool and people may want to do a sweat lodge on their own, but when non-natives do this, it is really appropriating something that is not theirs. I attended a sweat lodge in Memphis many years ago, and it was run by non-native people. Everything about it felt wrong, from the building of the lodge, the altar, the stones, the prayer, all of it. The reverence and meaning was not there. I left before it was over because it was just so depressing and disheartening to see a beautiful ceremony treated this way. Many Native ceremonies and rituals are not only spiritual in nature, but they connect us as a people one to another and as family. Unitarian Universalism's seventh principle, which states respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, is one which I can tie to my heritage. In Native spirituality, there is an understanding of this interdependent web connecting us all and our responsibility to the earth as stewards rather than owners of the land. For Natives, the concept of owning land is as foreign as owning the air. It's not possible to own something that is inherently free and its own entity. For us as Natives, there is a belief in life being in all that we see, rather than whether that be the rocks, the grass, the earth, the animals, or the people. There's life in all of it. All of what is here is made by the Creator, and so the Creator lives in all of his or her creation, thereby giving everything life. So if everything has life in it, and the Creator is in it, then it is quite naturally an interdependent web of existence, of which we are a part. In our sweat lodge, the stones that we put in the fire before being used in the lodge have life in them. But after they have been through the fire and used in the lodge, they are considered dead or devoid of life, as they have given their life in service of the ceremony. The stones cannot be reused in another sweat lodge ceremony because they no longer have life to give to the ceremony. As a child, I was brought up in a white Catholic home. I was never comfortable with the Catholic religion as it did not speak to me nor address my needs. When I traveled to the Midwest, where my father's people were from, and experienced my first sweat lodge and powwow, I learned about Native American spirituality and beliefs. And it's hard to put into words how this experience affected me. The spirituality and belief system of Native Americans, mainly tribes from the Midwest and Sioux in particular, spoke to me, rang true to me, and addressed my needs in a way I had never experienced before. Simply physically being on the land of my tribe felt like home for the first time in my life. I've lived in California, New York, Mississippi, but now Florida. I make friends easily, adapt well to new situations, and feel comfortable in most places. However, the feeling of truly being at home, I only experienced in the Midwest. I felt a sense of peace, contentment, wholeness, and belonging that I have never felt in any other place. It is this feeling that helped me understand the history and belief system of my people from the inside out. I felt a tie to the land that is ancestral and began to understand the concept of ancestral memory and what is passed on to us from our ancestors without words. This experience of a sense of belonging and bonding to not only a people, but a place, is one that was quite unexpected. It elevated my understanding of Native spirituality and religion being tied to geographical regions. Having that feeling of home gave me a sense of grounding and inner knowing that is beyond words. Since I don't live on my tribe's ancestral lands, I have looked to other religions to fill the void, and Unitarian Universalism is a religion that also spoke to me and addressed my needs. Several of the principles tie in well with my heritage. Unitarian Universalism also focuses on social justice, and part of this is about language and our use of it. It's good to see society rethinking and changing the use of some language in areas such as names of sports teams. I'm referring to sports teams such as the Braves, the Warriors, the chieftains, and in particular, the Redskins. Some may think the use of these names may be honoring to Native Americans because it evokes images of strength and power. However, it can also be said that the use of these words are trivializing to the Native history and culture. And the use of Redskins in particular has a history as a derogatory term for Native Americans, and it's always offensive. There was a time when an auto manufacturer named a car Sundance. This appears to be innocuous. However, Sundance is a Native ceremony that is very somber and sacred to my people, the Sioux in particular. It is as offensive to my people as naming a vehicle crucifixion would be to Christians. There are also stereotypes of Natives that have some factual basis, but have been used in derogatory ways. One in particular is a stereotype of the drunk Indian. Native Americans are genetically predisposed to alcoholism, hence the factual basis. But making jokes about drunk Indians is as offensive as if one were to make jokes about someone having diabetes or cancer. Alcoholism is not a moral failing or a character flaw or something to laugh at. It's a heartbreaking disorder that affects millions of people, Native or otherwise. As youths, we are called to reflect on the language we use and to ensure we are respectful of all people. I hope I've been able to give you a little insight as to how the use of Native names and terms can be hurtful and disrespectful. In closing, I would like to let you know that my experience of being Indigenous in this country has been both painful and rewarding. I have seen the shame and self-hatred that my mother carried and passed on to me, and I'm glad that I was able to stop that generational curse, learn from it, and teach my daughter to be proud of who she is and where she came from. We may not have control over what we were born into, but we do have a choice as to what we do with it and how we treat each other and how we view ourselves. Thank you all for listening to my experience and thoughts in honoring Indigenous Peoples Day.
That was beautiful. Thank you all. And Sandra, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. We really appreciate it. Like, something that I hope for in every worship service is connection, inspiration, and a call to action. Sandra's journey of reconnecting with her tribe and finding home again is inspiring. And as Sandra mentioned, many people take this inspiration from Native Americans and try to replicate it in their own personal lives, such as building a sweat lodge ceremony that doesn't belong to them. You know, there's a really good reason that this service is called Listening to Indigenous People. What Sandra is sharing with us today isn't an evangelical call saying that we should do what she is doing. Many of us here come from a privileged white colonizer, patriarchal culture that strives to own land, acquire wealth, and influence others. The American dream, right? Own a house, dog and a fence, have a robust 401k, have a career you can brag about at parties. Our culture does a phenomenal job of taking the fruits of others' labors without knowing the tree or feeling the soil. We've never smelled the flower or heard the bee that brought that fruit into fruition. Our fundamental understanding of how the world works and what is important to us is deeply ingrained in us. When we learn something new, we don't just throw out our old brain and replace it with a new one. No, we tie what we learn into everything we've already lived and experienced, everything we've learned as part of our culture, how we were raised. If we here decided to do a dance that honored the great spirit residing in the land of Sandra's ancestors, it would be such a shallow, hollow, empty gesture, because we don't know. And this is how appropriation happens. Gee, that looks neat. I want it. I want to do that. Many of us come from colonizers, and we live in this capitalistic society that dictates ownership as power. This is ours now. Isn't helpful. It isn't wanted. You aren't respecting their culture by trying to imitate it. So let's not steal those rituals and traditions that they've cultivated to show their love to the world, to nature around them. To mimic what they've built in love is insulting and not appropriate or applicable to our current surroundings. Instead, let us listen with reverence and respect to our indigenous neighbors who loved and cared for the earth before we ransacked it. Imitation is shallow, appropriation is wrong, but by listening, we can learn. Sandra highlighted a core piece of our belief system here as Unitarian Universalists that ties our values together. In this faith that is ours, that this ever-evolving faith that we have built together, we believe in the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Our seventh principle, this spirit of life in the world that is greater than just ourselves, and that is us as Unitarian Universalists. In Sandra's culture and heritage, they didn't own the land. They respected it with a deep reverence, and they respected the web of life in and around that land. And her faith isn't mobile. It's her faith of her people is tied to that land. Why don't we learn from those shared values instead of just trying to imitate the practices? I believe that if we were to deeply reflect on Mirror Lake across the street and learn more about its web of life, we can build our own sense of gratitude and respect for the land that we have here. Through reflecting on our surroundings with love and taking action to protect what natural world is left around us, we can genuinely embody the love that the Native peoples has shown us in a culture that treated the land and treated nature right and with respect. By caring for this place and these people with us here now, we are showing love more than we ever could by imitating someone else's experience of love. I'm so grateful that in our culture we've been evolving. We've been learning more about how harmful our culture has been to our planet, our web of life, and to each other. Let's take ownership of our own culture and forge a new path for ourselves filled with this love and respect. And I ask for all of you to imagine this future with me and put your efforts into reforming our culture through genuine service and love. Thank you.
Normally, our Share the Plate collections are held once a month to support the work of one of our social justice teams. Due to the severe impact of Hurricanes Helene and Milton on our church community, we're holding 2 Share the Plate collections this month to help them out. The first was on October 6th, and the second is today. 1/2 of the non-pledged portion of the offering today and from October 6th will be used to help members and staff who have been affected by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Please be generous, as the needs are great. In the sanctuary, the offering will now be given and received.
What is given in love is received with great joy. Now please rise as you are willing and able for our closing hymn, number 1073 in the Teal hymnal, "The Earth is Our Mother."
So this hymn is a little unusual for us, but it's very repetitive. Please notice that there are more verses down at the bottom, and I'm sure you'll catch on. Hey, Yunga, ho, Yunga, hey, Yung, Yung. That's how the refrain goes. All right, Tim, what's that tune? Oh, I picked the right key even. Here we go. The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. The earth is our mother. We must take care of her. Hey, Yunga, ho, Yung. Hey, Yung, Yung. Hey, Yunga, ho, Yung. Hey, Yung, Yung. Her sacred ground we walk upon. With every step we take, her sacred ground we walk upon. With every step we take. Hey, yunga, oh, yunga, hey, yunga. Hey, yunga, oh, yunga, hey, yung, yung. The earth is our mother. Take care of her. The earth is our mother. She will take care of us. Hey, yunga, oh, yunga. Hey, yunga, yung. Hey, yunga, oh, yunga. Hey, yung, yung. The sky is our Father. We will take care of him. Sky is our Father. We will take care of him. Hey, yunga, ho, yunga. Hey, yung, yung. Hey, yunga, ho, yung. Hey, yung, yung. The sea is our sister. We will take care of her. The sky is our sister. We will take care of her. Hey, yunga, hey, yung, yung. Hey, yunga, ho, yung. Hey, yung, yung. The forest is our brother. We will take care of him. The forest is our brother. We will take care of him. Hey, yunga, ho, yung. Hey, yung, yung. Hey, yunga, ho, yung. Hey, yung, yung. Thank you.
You may be seated. Our closing words are from Black Elk, an Oglala Lakota medicine man in the Midwest Plains. These were recorded and published in 1932 by John G. Nehart in his book, Black Elk Speaks. I could see that the Washichus, the white men, did not care for each other the way our people did before the nation's hoop was broken. They would take everything from each other if they could. And so there were some who had more of everything than they could use, while crowds of people had nothing at all, and maybe were starving. They had forgotten that the earth was their mother. Now please remain seated as Tim plays our postlude, Beautiful, by Carole King.
My favorite part of worship team is being right next to that beautiful piano. Thank you. As Michael extinguishes our chalice, we invite you to follow along with the hand gestures. The light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of courage. The words to UUSP's traditional chalice extinguishing are in your order of service and online in the text chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of courage. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world. Our worship is over and our service begins. Please join us for coffee hour in Gilmore Hall. Sandra will be taking questions in the library.